any re-engagement with Iran, this conflict will end at some point.
Assuming that they know the Middle East and they know Islam and they know the others far better than we do. And I'm sorry, but that's pure ignorance.
The world sees luxury, golden palaces rising from endless deserts, futuristic cities glowing under neon skies, and wealth so vast it feels almost unreal. Private jets cross continents in hours, and skylines built from oil money stand as symbols of success. But beneath this carefully crafted image lies a reality far more complex, far more dangerous. Behind the glamour, a silent war is unfolding, one without tanks, without explosions, and without headlines. It is a war of influence, strategy, and survival. At the heart of this hidden conflict are three powerful nations: Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Qatar. To the outside world, they appear united, bound by culture, religion, and shared interests. But behind closed doors, unity gives way to rivalry. Each nation is driven by ambition, led by powerful princes who were not elected but born into influence. These are men raised in royal courts, trained to lead, and prepared to protect their power at any cost. In this region, power is not simply held. It is defended, expanded, and sometimes quietly taken. Alliances are fragile, trust is temporary, and every decision carries consequences that reach far beyond borders. What happens in the Gulf does not stay in the Gulf. It shapes global markets, influences politics, and affects the balance of power worldwide. At the center of it all are three visions for the future, each competing for dominance. And as these visions collide, the silent war grows stronger, hidden beneath diplomacy and public smiles. There was a time when leadership in the Gulf followed a predictable path. Older rulers governed with caution, tradition shaped decisions, and change came slowly. Stability was valued above all else, and the region moved forward at a controlled pace. But that era did not last. A new generation of leaders emerged, young, ambitious, and unwilling to accept the limits of the past. They did not want to preserve the system. They wanted to transform it. In Saudi Arabia, a powerful prince began reshaping the kingdom from within. Long-standing traditions were challenged, economic reforms were introduced, and a vision of modernization took center stage. It was bold, even risky, and it sent a clear message: the future would not wait. But transformation comes at a price. Every reform created resistance. Every decision carried political weight, and every move was closely watched, both by allies and rivals. At the same time, the United Arab Emirates was building its own path to power. Instead of dramatic change, it chose precision and strategy. It expanded its influence quietly, investing in global trade, infrastructure, and military presence far beyond its borders. Ports, alliances, and economic partnerships turned the UAE into a global player, one that operated with discipline and long-term vision. Meanwhile, Qatar took a completely different approach. Small in size but immense in ambition, it focused on influence rather than force. Through media, diplomacy, and strategic relationships, it positioned itself as a voice that could not be ignored. It built connections where others hesitated, spoke where others remained silent, and carved out a role that defied expectations. And that is where the tension began. At first, the tensions were subtle, small disagreements, political differences, and quiet frustrations that did not attract global attention. On the surface, everything seemed stable. Leaders met, agreements were signed, and the appearance of unity remained intact. But beneath that surface, something far more serious was developing. Suspicion was growing, trust was weakening, and every action was being analyzed more closely than before. Qatar's rise began to concern its neighbors. Its growing influence, its independent policies, and its powerful media presence made it unpredictable in the eyes of Saudi Arabia and the UAE. What Qatar saw as sovereignty, others saw as defiance. And in a region where order and alignment are expected, defiance can quickly become a threat. Then came the moment that changed everything. Without warning, borders were closed, flights were canceled, and trade routes were cut off. Qatar found itself isolated, not by distant enemies, but by its closest neighbors. The message was clear and direct: align with the regional order or face the consequences. It was a bold move, designed to pressure, weaken, and control. But instead of collapsing, Qatar adapted. New alliances were formed, alternative trade routes were established, and the country found ways to survive under pressure. What was meant to isolate it ultimately strengthened its independence. And in that moment, the silent rivalry transformed into something far more real. The Gulf was no longer just a region of cooperation. It had become a stage for competition. 3 powers, 3 strategies, and 3 leaders now stood fully aware that the future would not be shared equally. Not all wars are fought with weapons. Some are fought with narratives, carefully crafted stories that shape how the world thinks, reacts, and decides. In the Gulf, this invisible battlefield became one of the most powerful tools of conflict. At the center of it stood media, not just as a source of information, but as an instrument of influence. Qatar, in particular, built a global media presence that reached millions, giving it the ability to shape conversations far beyond its borders. To many, it represented bold journalism, challenging authority, exposing hidden truths, and giving voice to perspectives often ignored. But to its rivals, it was something far more dangerous. Saudi Arabia and the UAE began to see this influence not as neutrality, but as strategy. Because in a region where image defines power, controlling the narrative can be just as important as controlling resources. In response, their own media networks expanded, becoming more sophisticated, more strategic, and more deliberate. Stories were no longer just reported, they were framed. Perceptions were shaped, alliances were reinforced, and rivals were quietly undermined. What emerged was a silent information war, where every headline carried intent and every broadcast had consequences. In this battle, victory was not measured in territory, but in influence over minds. Beneath the vast deserts of the Gulf lies the foundation of its power, energy. For decades, oil defined the region's importance, placing Saudi Arabia at the center of global influence. Its vast reserves gave it the ability to shape markets, influence prices, and impact economies around the world. But the balance of power began to shift as new energy dynamics emerged. Qatar transformed itself into a global leader in liquefied natural gas, quietly building an empire that supplied energy to nations across continents. Unlike oil, gas offered flexibility and growing demand, giving Qatar a strategic advantage in an evolving energy landscape. Meanwhile, the UAE diversified its approach, investing not only in oil but also in finance, trade, and technology, ensuring its influence would extend beyond a single resource. This was no longer just a competition over energy, it became a battle for the future. Massive deals were signed behind closed doors, partnerships were formed with global powers, and investments spread influence far beyond the Gulf. Every pipeline, every shipment, and every agreement became part of a larger strategy. Because in this region, energy is not just an industry, it is a source of power that shapes the world itself. The Gulf's power struggle was never isolated. It quickly became part of a much larger game, one involving the world's most powerful nations. The United States had long maintained a dominant presence, building military bases and securing alliances that ensured its influence in the region. But global power is never static, and new players began to emerge. China entered the scene with a different strategy, focusing on trade, infrastructure, and long-term investments. It avoided direct confrontation, instead weaving itself into the economic fabric of the region. Russia, on the other hand, pursued calculated partnerships, particularly in energy, using diplomacy and strategic alliances to expand its reach. For the Gulf nations, these global powers were not just allies, they were opportunities. Each relationship was carefully managed, each agreement designed to maximize advantage. The princes of the Gulf understood that true power came from balance, from maintaining independence while leveraging global influence. In this complex chessboard, every move mattered, and every alliance carried hidden consequences. From the outside, the Gulf Cooperation Council appeared to represent unity, a collective strength that ensured stability in a volatile region. It symbolized cooperation, shared interests, and a common vision for the future. But behind this image, cracks were beginning to form. Differences in strategy, ambition, and leadership created tensions that could no longer be ignored. Meetings became less productive, agreements less reliable, and trust increasingly fragile. Each nation began to prioritize its own interests, its own vision, and its own path forward. Saudi Arabia sought to maintain its position as the dominant force. The UAE focused on expanding its strategic influence, and Qatar continued to assert its independence. What once appeared as a strong alliance slowly transformed into a delicate balance. It was no longer about unity, but about coexistence. And in geopolitics, such balance is always temporary. Because when visions diverge, even the strongest alliances can begin to unravel. Over time, the intensity of the conflict began to shift. Open tensions eased, and efforts were made to restore communication. Diplomatic channels reopened, and relationships that once seemed broken were cautiously rebuilt. But the dynamic had changed permanently. Trust, once lost, could not be fully restored. The rivalry did not disappear, it simply evolved. It became more controlled, more strategic, and the real battle is not about the present, it is about the future. A future where energy markets may change, where technology will redefine power, and where influence will extend beyond traditional boundaries. Each nation is preparing for this shift, investing in innovation, infrastructure, and global connections. The question is no longer who holds power today, but who will hold it tomorrow. Adaptation becomes essential, and those who fail to evolve risk being left behind. History moves forward without hesitation, and only those prepared for change can shape what comes next. For now, the region exists in a state of balance. There is no open conflict, no direct confrontation, and no clear winner. Instead, there is a careful equilibrium, maintained through strategy and restraint. Each nation understands the risks of escalation and the cost of instability. This balance is fragile, constantly shifting with every decision and every global development. It requires awareness, calculation, and discipline to maintain. Because one misstep could disrupt everything, turning silent rivalry into something far more serious. In the end, this is a story that may never be fully visible to the world. It exists behind diplomacy, beneath public statements, and within the decisions made in private. The leaders at the center of it all remain in the shadows, guiding their nations with strategies that extend far beyond what is seen. They are not just rulers, they are architects of the future, shaping outcomes that will define the region for decades to come. And as long as power remains at stake, the rivalry will continue. Quiet, controlled, and ever present.